The chessboard is made up of 8 rows and 8 columns for a total of 64 squares of alternating colors. Each square of the chessboard is identified with a unique pair of a letter and a number. Both players sit opposite to each other. Make sure a lighter-colored square should be in the bottom right-hand side for each player. Let's set up the board. At the beginning of the game, the pieces are arranged for each side. 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights, and 8 pawns. Total 16 pieces each side. Your queen should be the same color as the color of your square. White queen, for instance, on white or the lighter square, and the black queen on the black or darker square. Check and make sure each piece should be facing each other. The king across from the king, and the queen across from the queen. Chess moves. Each type of piece has its own method of movement. King. King can move exactly 1 square horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. Once in every game, each king is allowed to make a special move, known as castling. Queen. The queen is the most powerful piece of chess. Queen can move any number of vacant squares diagonally, horizontally, or vertically. Rook, or castle. Rook can move any number of vacant squares vertically or horizontally. Just to make it easy to understand, rook moves in a plus pattern. So rook can move any number of squares, up, right, left, or down. It also is moved while castling. Bishop. Bishop can move any number of vacant squares in any diagonal direction. Just to make it easy to understand, bishop moves in an X pattern. Knight. Knight can move 1 square along any rank or file and then at an angle. The knight's movement can also be viewed as an L, or 7, laid out at any horizontal or vertical angle. Knight is the only piece that can jump over other pieces. For example, if there were any pieces right next to the knight can simply jump over these pieces and move. And if there is any piece on the square, the knight can simply capture that piece. Pawns. Pawns are the smallest, weakest pieces of chess. Pawns can move forward 1 square, if that square is unoccupied. If it has not yet moved, the pawn has the option of moving 2 squares forward provided both squares in front of the pawn are unoccupied. A pawn cannot move backward. Pawns are the only pieces that capture differently from how they move. They can capture an enemy piece on either of the 2 spaces adjacent to the space in front of them, i.e. the 2 squares diagonally in front of them, but cannot move to these spaces if they are vacant. The pawn is also involved in the 2 special moves, en passant and promotion. Promotion. When a pawn reaches the other end of the board, it can be changed for any other piece of its own color, except the king. This is called pawn promotion. So a pawn can be promoted to a queen, rook, a bishop, or a knight. A pawn is promoted by removing the pawn from the board and replacing the chosen piece on the promotion square. En passant. It is a special type of capture that pawns can make under very specific circumstances. This pawn capture can occur immediately after a player moves a pawn 2 squares forward from its starting position, and an enemy pawn could have captured it had the same pawn moved only 1 square forward. The opponent captures the just moved pawn as if taking it as it passes through the first square. The resulting position is the same as if the pawn had only moved 1 square forward and the enemy pawn had captured normally. The en passant capture must be done on the very next turn, or the right to do so is lost. Such a move is the only occasion in chess in which a piece captures but does not move to the square of the captured piece. Castling. At most once in every game, each king is allowed to make a special move, known as castling. When player moves his king 2 squares over to one side, and then move the rook from that side right corner next to the king on the opposite side. For castling, a player must follow these few conditions. 1. It must be the king's first move. 2. It must be that rook's first move. 3. There shouldn't be any other pieces in between the king and rook. 4. The king shouldn't be in checkmate, nor pass through a checkmate. Let's start the game. The player who has the white pieces always starts a game of chess. Choose any of your pieces that is able to move and put it in its new space. Each turn consists of moving one piece, one time only. After the player with the white piece takes their turn, play alternates to the player with the black pieces. Capture your opponent's pieces. Capturing pieces means landing on the same space as an opponent's piece and removing them from the game. Try to capture your opponent's stronger pieces, like their queen, rooks, and bishops, to make their turns less powerful. What is checkmate? The ultimate aim in the game chess is delivering a checkmate, trapping your opponent's king. Checkmate happens when a king is placed in check and there is no legal move to escape. When this happens, say checkmate out loud to declare the end of the game. Let your opponent double-check if they can make a move before declaring yourself the winner. How to win the game. Checkmate ends the game, and the side whose king was checkmated loses. Games may also end in a draw if neither player can force a checkmate, such as if the kings are the only pieces left on the board. There are few rules for a draw. If there are enough pieces on the board to force a checkmate, for example, a king and a bishop versus a king. If the same exact position is repeated 3 times, it's not necessarily 3 times in a row. 50 consecutive moves have been played while neither player has moved a pawn or captured any piece. If a player's turn is to move, he is not in check but has no legal moves. This situation is called stalemate.